we look forward to taking that further. And I'm glad that you mentioned the example of Japan and Kedandran, with whom we partner very closely. Madam, one of the things that I was tempted, because you talked about it in the morning and today you touched upon, in this very evolving and very strongly in the world of digitization, in the world of digitalization, there are lots of inclusivity opportunities that arises for our countries as well as for our businesses. And I think in this digital sphere, there is a lot again in the rules that WTO can bring in. And how do you look at this? You mentioned technology, and that's going to play a very critical role. And that's the reason, because that can even be very exclusive, excluding in terms of helping prosperity come in. So, but then it could also, I guess, an opportunity. So, how do you take it, and what's your advice on that as far as trade is concerned?
Well, I'm one of those who is very excited about technology, actually. I've always been. It has its downsides, no doubt, but I see technology and the advent of AI, as we've done studies on that at the WTO, and there could be huge positives on the trade side. We see AI, for instance, bringing down trade costs substantially. We even see the nature of products and services traded being changed by the infusion of AI, and how to govern that is quite exciting. But we've done a study that shows that, look, if we're able to adopt AI evenly across the world, it could be a net positive. It could even increase trade, global trade, by 40% by 2040. We call it our 40 by 40. But if we don't adopt it evenly, it's going to create more inequality between developing and developed countries. And that worries us quite a bit. How do we avoid that divide? Now, I think India stands at a unique opportunity because of the skills, the digital infrastructure, public digital it has established. And the examples, it's very innovative that India is a leader here and has the ability to push forward in a way that can also bring in other developing countries in the digital sphere. Now, what can we do at WTO? The basic rules that govern digital trade are not yet there. There are none. And at the WTO, we are negotiating that as a plurilateral agreement with about 91 members. So we have these agreements. I have a little bit of an issue because India has some issues with plurilaterals, but at the WTO, there are two ways to approach rules. Multilateral rules, but some members can also get together to develop, in a coalition of the willing, rules that can govern some of the things that happen in world trade. So that is happening. We also have the e-commerce moratorium, which is a multilateral issue about, do we extend this so there are no taxes on digital transmissions and electronic transmissions. And I hope we can extend this at MC14 so it can create an environment. But can I ask you a question? My question to you is, what are the 2 or 3 things you think the WTO should do? Where can we reform and be more useful to you and all the business people out there? Even one area that you can think of.
Well, that's a fantastic question. The reverse was quite unexpected. But yes, of course, we as India talks about always that we do wish to go by rules-based trading system. How do we see some reforms? And Kedandran has posted to you as to the type of reforms that it looks at seeing. So when we look at rules-based system and as to how that can be enforced, and the enforcement of that rules-based system across the globe, and is something that we would expect from the WTO to come out very strongly, because we do see faltering nations get away, and some of us who are in the emerging category, and some more who are actually even in the developing category, if I may say, they suffer the most. And we would like as you said, that what we would like to see is that enforcement and the following of much rules-based system by all nations. And how can that's something that we would look forward to WTO doing.
Well, thank you. I think your answer alludes to something that where there is an issue at the WTO, which is the dispute settlement system, the only one of its kind in the world where one member can bring a dispute. And the second tier is like a lower court and an appellate court. The second tier has been hobbled since 2019. But I want to use this opportunity to tell everyone that it doesn't mean the system is not working at all. It is. The lower level, panel level, lower court is working. And members are still bringing cases, if you wish, of problems they have with each other in trade. Since 2019, when the appeals appellate body was hobbled, we've had 50. So it has continued. And now, you know what is happening? There are alternatives that have been developed to the appellate body. So the EU and some other countries have gotten together, other members, to develop what they call the multi-party interim arbitration arrangement, MPIA, which takes the place of the appellate. It has now handled 3 cases successfully. So we do have an alternative, and 58 members have now joined, and we are looking towards 100 by MC14. So we don't have to be, I don't believe in getting stuck. If something doesn't work, come up with a new idea, new creation, and we've done it. Does that mean we abandon the appellate body? No. Still needs to be reformed when the time comes, and we can persuade the US. But for now, we use the MPIA.
No, thank you. Thank you very much. And because you talked about the MCN and the MC14, and we are looking forward to March 2026.
Are you coming? Are you coming?
You ask me, I will.
Okay.
Excellency, we see that, what you see as an outcome of the MC14, some of it which you alluded to, but long-standing issues of food security. You mentioned about the PSA, permanent solution to PSH after so many years. The significant demand of India, as you know, has been various stakeholders and resource poor, small, marginal farmers. So what's your expectations again from the countries at the MC14?
Well, I hope, when I've talked to a lot of leaders now, I mean, at the president and prime minister level, ministers, ambassadors in Geneva, and there's an emerging view that MC14 should try to deal with those issues in the WTO that don't work. Meaning not that ministers will come there to solve the issue, but at least to identify and agree on a set of issues and then choose the modalities to solve the problem. I'm coming back to India's criticism. It is what they call a past mandate. India is concerned because PSH, an interim solution was given to India, and then there was, in the papers which I've read carefully, it was agreed that a permanent solution would be negotiated. And that has gotten stuck because there are many members who have, views about the PSH program, and it's become so polarized in a way, trying to even introduce objective information to help them make decisions is difficult. But there's the issue of the past mandate, and India has a good point there. What do you do about past mandates? I think India should put it as part of what it's requesting to be looked at in the reform. Separate it a little bit from the ongoing negotiations. Those should continue. But put the issue of past mandates. Why shouldn't ministers look at, these are the things we agreed. Why haven't we done them? It's a reform issue. And I hope it will be one of those that will be put forward. I'm not a member, I'm only the DG. But I think this is a good case in point.
No, thank you. Another area, just to change subject, is today we from the Indian business, the Indian government, many other countries are concerned, and rightly so, on climate and green. But we see sometimes tools being adopted or which are more we see for protection, and we view it and more more as trade barriers. While we support green transition, definitely we are keen to see that, but we have our aspirations as a developing and there's an emerging strong economy. The others also have their own aspirations. But how can we look at certain measures that we see which are more like trade barriers? I'm of course referring to areas like CBAM. I don't need to couch my, but how do you see that being navigated through?
Well, I think this is an excellent area to talk about, and I'm very sympathetic to business. Do you know that there are now over 100, I think there are 113 carbon pricing schemes in the world, and business is supposed to navigate that from one country to the other, different emission standards. How do you navigate all of this for your products and for your trade? So I'm sympathetic. But like I said in Belém last week, there are two communities that don't come together in a way that I think would help us solve the problem: the trade and the environment. They are like two separate communities moving in parallel and suspicious of each other. I think we need more of a dialogue so that the environment people can understand the way the trade people see some of the measures they put in place, and the trade people understand why the environment. The WTO Secretariat has been working hard to see if we can help bridge that kind of gap. So climate is an existential threat. In my village, farmers don't know the word climate change. They don't know what it means. But what they say to me is, my daughter, for an older farmer, or my wife in my husband's village, they say the rain has been coming too much. It has been, our crops are dying in the field. We've never seen this in our lifetime. Something has changed. We don't know when to harvest. We don't know when to plant. So climate change is real. So we have to do something about it. But we must not do it in such a way that these measures are seen as protectionist when they are not meant to be, or unmanageable, where systems are not interoperable and business has to deal with so many. So I agree with you. What's the solution? At the WTO, we are actually good at trying to help with standards, at interoperability of systems, and we think that the best approach is a global carbon pricing approach against which each country can measure its own approach. Like we have a methodology for customs valuation. We need a methodology globally accepted. And then that will stop all the problems and accusations. If you do something, it can be measured against the global standard.
Madam, you're the first lady Director General of the WTO, right? And 50% of our population in the world needs to come up at par. There has to be parity. And when you talk about trade and parity which relates to that, how do you see, and I asked this question because you also talked about Africa, and it's so important to us to see the development, and we see trade and trade rules play a very, very critical, can be a very important way of including not just economies, but including 50% of our population in the mainstream and helping that out. We see many ways that have not been taken into account by many, many countries, which has led to deprivation. As the first lady Director General, I wanted to seek your views. I know it's not connected to the fireside chat that we are having on WTO, yeah. But I always feel very strongly when we look at the 50% of the population of our world not perhaps being at par.
Well, I mean, I'm an economist by training, so I look at numbers.
Yes.
And so for me, if you look at many SMEs, they're driven by women. We've also done many studies that show that women SMEs who trade externally, they make 3 times as much income as those who trade internally. So trade works. So if you want, and they contribute substantially, not only to the trading system, but to the national and global economy. If you want to exclude a strong contributor to your GDP, that's not a good thing. So I'm coming at it purely from an economist point of view. Women are very hardworking, creative. They are running businesses that work and employ other women. So they should be included. So the issue is, how do we empower them? If you go through all the things, you find a whole plethora of issues, which SMEs also, male-led SMEs, but women encounter them more: access to finance issues, market access, knowledge, and so on. And so at the WTO, we have been working very hard trying to target those issues. We have a branch called International Trade Center, which is 50% owned by WTO and 50% by the United Nations. And they focus on helping SMEs. So we are trying to do, and female-headed SMEs, we are trying to do our best through that instrument all over the world. They have a program called She Trades that tries to empower women with the knowledge. Secondly, we just started a fund. It's called the the Women's Fund for Digital Trade. It's to empower women who are trading digitally, because we now found many of them are doing that. We're raising $50 million. We've already made calls for proposals, and we're trying to get the money out there to support them. So, and rules. We also now have starting to see the issue of assisting women, not because they are women. I want to insist on that. I'm looking at it very hard-nosed. It is because they are net contributors to business, to the economy. How do we make sure they are not left behind and that they don't lose opportunities? Which rules should be looked at to make sure they're included? That's also beginning to happen. Not everyone agrees with that, by the way. Again, I hasten to say some of our members, and sometimes India can be included, think that maybe those issues should be handled nationally. I don't debate that. You can handle them nationally, but I also think multilaterally, whatever we can do, we try to do it.
Thank you for that message, because it leads me to really talk about another area of work, and I'm changing a little bit of subject once again. You touched upon SMEs. And the small and the mid-sized companies today, especially the small and the smaller enterprises, the micro enterprises, in countries like ours, feel threatened by the way sometimes we see countries and the ecosystems develop. Your reach out and you mentioned about SMEs, so your reach out and connecting with the SMEs by the WTO is extremely, extremely critical and important, is the way we feel. And I know that you have personally taken a lot of interest on the SMEs in the small and mid-sized companies of the world. What's your message, and how are you connecting to the MSMEs, the micro, small and medium enterprises, through the WTO?
Well, MSMEs in almost every country, even in the developed world, create 90% of the employment, sometimes in an economy, and produce a lot of the value. In value chains, MSMEs are very important. So this is a sector that I'm actually very passionate about. And I believe we also need to pay particular attention to their problems. The WTO has a working group on MSMEs, where members actively consider the problems of MSMEs and what to do about it. And so that group is led by the ambassador to Barbados, Ambassador Matthew Wilson, and is very well attended, and they are very constantly looking at ways and means. In addition to all of that, like I said, I've taken an interest. I have an advisory group of business leaders, a business advisory group, and we've made sure that it's not just big businesses that are members, but also we have some MSMEs, including one from India, who are members of the group. So we can listen directly to what are their problems? How do they see the rules that we're making? And what advice can they give us?
Right. Madam, one area which got touched upon in the morning session was about free trade agreements. And I heard your speech also very, very carefully. I wanted to hear once again from you, is there any alternative but to go ahead with it, with many free trade agreements when there is so much of uncertainty? I know it's you have labored on this point very strongly, but you also heard our honorable minister speak about but what is the alternative but to see how do we club together a few countries and see to it that we are safe when we are getting attacked from all over?
Well, we welcome free trade agreements at the WTO. First, let me commend Minister Piyush Goyal. He's trying to do a free trade agreement, a full-fledged one with the US, which would be WTO compliant. We encourage full-fledged free trade agreements that cover substantially all trade, and that's what he's trying to do, more than we do framework agreements, which are not very compliant. So congratulations on his trying to push for that. But I just want people to understand that we don't have a problem with free trade agreements. Why is that? If you look at we have a whole unit. The only work they do is look at all the agreements that are made in the world. Because as soon as you make it, you have to report it to the WTO. Most of them are built on a WTO platform. So even though it is between two members or two groups, the rules are very much WTO based. So we do not see them as a threat. And actually we are okay with them because we think members need to diversify their trade. So we welcome this diversification by members seeking new markets. We welcome the regional agreements. They are WTO compliant or supportive, most of them, so they are not a problem. I know people get surprised because they say, aren't you threatened by all these agreements? And no, they should go ahead. They help the members to diversify their trade. I don't see them as a threat. I welcome them.
Oh, good. Thank you. Thank you for that comment. We have a few minutes and we are running a little over time, but I'll open it up for some questions from our businessmen in this group. And can I turn to anyone that I could see? Dilip trying to, please, a mic for Mr. Dilip Soni of Rockwell.
Thank you so much, CB, for giving me this opportunity. Dr. Avela, thank you so much for those insight and comments that you shared right here. Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
Thank you. I come from a technology company, Rockwell Automation. We are hugely invested into the future of advanced manufacturing. And a trend that we see, which we see as a strength for India as well, is servicification of manufacturing, where services and products begin to blend. And I wanted to just understand your point of view from where you sit on how the policy framework might evolve to support that.
How a policy framework to support certification?
No, servicification, so services and products.
Servicification.
Yeah.
How can one support servicification of products?
Oh, servicification of products.
So new services coming into manufacturing. So how do you...
Services coming into manufacturing. Well, this is a very interesting question because we are seeing that manufacturing is more and more services embedded in manufacturing. So when we talk of services separately and manufacture, actually it's much more complex than that and much more exciting in a way. And then I talked about AI. Correct. Getting more and more embedded in products and changing the nature of the products. That's what you're referring to.
That's right.
Yeah. I see that. I see a big future in that, honestly. And I think the only aspect, I went to talk to the ISO the other day, and we were talking of this subject. What we are getting asked about standards. You know, how do we take I like the way you put servicification of products. I hadn't heard that term before. You know, so the issue is, what does this mean for standards? And we don't have the answer yet. We don't have the answer, but we are beginning to plumb that question because it's going to come. And because I think it's a trend for the future, we have to work fast. So there are several organizations thinking about this and how to deal with it. But I think it's a good thing. It's an exciting thing. And I don't think we can stop it.
Thanks for those insights. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. I'll come to you, and before that I'll come to Ravichandran of Danfoss.
Thank you, Director General. That was very inspiring to listen to you. My question is, the world is more moving to data flow than trade flow. And currently, if you look at the global south, they are not being, on a level playing field with the developed economies when it comes to data regime and data interoperability, and there are no trust-based rules to share data. What is WTO doing about it?
I think, well, people have said that data flows are the new oil or the new gold. I don't know which. And you're absolutely right that many developing countries are worried about their data being captured and used without their benefiting from it, or even losing the privacy. And we don't have our own rules sometimes to govern this. So at the WTO, this is one of the issues we're looking at. In the e-commerce agreement that was being negotiated, data flows was a big issue. It has not been resolved. As you can imagine, there are differing views as to how rules should be made to govern data flows. There are some who believe in a more liberal approach, and there are others who believe in, well, I need to have something to reassure me. So it is going to be handled in the first phase has just dealt with very, I think, basic things like e-signatures, spam, things like that, to get basic rules across on how to deal. The next is data flows. So this is going to be the very difficult, but we are working on it, and it's in the next negotiations. I think it's going to be very tough.
That's a very, very important thought, Madam, and I think that's something that we would like to engage deeper into, because data is going to be a very, very critical issue. You talked about data being gold, and person who relates a lot to gold in certain ways is Thomas Muthoot in India. Yes, Thomas, carry on.
Thank you, CB. Your Excellency, it was a good interaction. My question, I come from a financial services sector. I would like to know a lot of things are happening in the Gen AI and AI, and this is going to affect or accelerate financial services. So in a country like India, emerging economy, how do you think WTO can make the financial system safer in an emerging economy?
Well, first of all, India is stripping ahead in this area, and I think is doing extremely well. The WTO cannot make rules on everything. And I'm not sure that on financial systems and the role of AI, that we are the competent authorities to deal with that. So maybe some of the central bankers and the finance ministers and the central authorities are better equipped and they are looking at the role of AI. But beyond that, things like stable coins in the financial system and how this is going to change that, how AI is changing that whole system. The finance ministers of the world with the central bank governors are looking at those. And I think they are more competent than, we will look at it from the point of view of how does it affect trade. But I think with respect to regulatory issues in that regard, I'd rather leave it to them. I'm not trying to avoid your question. I don't think the WTO should try to do everything. We should leave some things where we don't have as much competence to others, and then maybe try to partner with them once they've got a handle on the issue.
Thank you.
Thank you. There's someone who raised a hand
I guess
here. Last question. Sorry? Yes, the last guy. Yeah.
Madam Excellency, this is Sanjay Kombera. I'm CEO at Axel One, a deep climate tech, climate engineering company. What's your perspective? I mean, you've talked about the ESG regulations around the world. I have actually two questions. One, do you think the world would have a one standard framework on environmental, social, and governance aspects? Because right now we have CSRD, we have different frameworks around the world. That's first question. Second one is, we have talked about green economy and we have talked about hydrogen powered, because hydrogen is actually, based upon a lot of stats, hydrogen is a failure. So do you think the countries should invest more on climate engineering, really understand, bring AI to understand your weather patterns, your climate models? You have talked about lots of floods around different parts of the world. Sometimes it rains, sometimes it doesn't rain. There's a lot of unpredictability for farmers. So do you think countries should spend more money on, when I say the green economy money, on the climate engineering side, rather than just spending money on hydrogen power and solar powered initiatives?
I got this last question. I'll come back to, I didn't get the first. So let me answer the last one first. I think I think businesses are deciding. And in spite of all the talk against climate change and dialing down on those investments, I think many businesses have decided that the cat has left the barn, or whatever you want to call it. And they are continuing to make investments in renewables, in green hydrogen, in solar. I don't think it's either or. I think these investments need to go in parallel, okay? That's what I think. You should make investments in understanding what impact climate-related changes are going to have on the real sector. I think it's very, very worthwhile, because sometimes we are talking about lives being lost. But we should also make investments on adaptation issues, on mitigation, how to mitigate, understanding it, but also how to adapt, because it's happening. I think it's not either or. The two should go hand in hand. We have focused a lot more on mitigation in the past. And now people are saying, hey, we need to change gears and also invest in adaptation. And I think that is the case. By the way, can I just give you one statistic? We have up to $2 trillion of very bad subsidies that are wrongly subsidizing the wrong things in the world, in both developed and developing countries. There are some kinds of fossil fuel subsidies up to 1.2 trillion that are not really necessary. There are subsidies on agriculture, some of them necessary, some not. Some are trade distorting. There are subsidies on fisheries that the WTO has just removed or prohibited, 22 billion. If we even repurposed 1/3, I'm not asking for all, because removing subsidies is politically very difficult, just a portion to work on adaptation and mitigation, it would really be very good for the world. I'm not asking for extra fiscal resources. Let's just change the nature of the badly used resources we have in the world, and that could help with these investments. And the first part of the question,
the first one was,
if you kindly excuse, because I know the entire team of the Director General will come onto the stage, because she has a ministerial meeting immediately after that. And therefore, I could even thank you for 10 minutes, but I'll only be saying thank you for being with us, for spending time and connecting with Indian business and the world business so directly. We appreciate this. We would wish to continue this. Thank you, Excellency. Thank you, Madam, for a brilliant session, and also the morning session before that. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, join me in thanking the Honorable Director General.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for sharing those extremely valuable perspectives with us. Thank you, Mr. Banerjee, for initiating that conversation. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here with us. We have our next session, which is part of this plenary hall. It is at 5:45. We'll request you to please join us back for that session.
Loya.